Your narcissist may very well be the first person to rain on your parade. And for a lot of people, their own success is one of the first times they recognize how petty, how sensitive, and how unkind their narcissistic partner can become. Have any of you ever been in a narcissistic relationship where they blamed you for the inconvenience that was caused by your illness? Listen on, because we're going to take that on today. This is a tough one because if, you're thinking like, say what? Yeah, they'll blame you for the inconvenience you caused by getting sick. Thank you to the person who wrote in with this question because it really echoed something I've witnessed in multiple cases of narcissistic abuse, especially in longer term relationships. So I think it's an important one to take on, or it's a cautionary tale. So imagine the narcissistic person was inconvenienced by your cancer or some other long-term illness or your pregnancy or your back surgery. And they have no problem telling you, the communication geniuses that they are, right? So they may say something to you like, hey, I just want you to know all that chemotherapy stuff you did and you losing your hair and having to drive you and sit in the hospital, having to deal with you. It was really inconvenient for me and darn insurance paperwork. Or they may something like, just so you are aware, it was really hard for me after your surgery. It totally threw off my schedule. And they say this with a straight face. How dare you inconvenience them with your hospitalization and your illness? I have actually seen it happen to people in my life in real time. And I remember feeling sick when I saw it happen. Not because I was surprised. The narcissists are going to invalidate. It's what they do. But because I knew how much it hurt the person who was sick and actually still held hope and believed that maybe their illness would be the wake-up call for the toxic person in their life. So you might be thinking, what the hell is this about? This almost feels sadistic. Well, just as a reminder, the only reality and experience in the world for them is theirs. So when something as real as your illness comes up, it is really experienced as an affront. How dare there be an experience that's not mine, and on top of that, one that's actually inconveniencing me. So when you are sick and other people are checking in to send you well wishes or maybe help or send some food or be supportive or just be kind, none of those calls are for the narcissistic person, are they? And even when those people call to talk with the narcissistic person, they may say things like, oh my goodness, your wife is so brave. Well, that's not going to work for the narcissistic person who views themselves almost delusionally as the only one who can be brave and good. Your illness may also be a grim reminder of their own mortality, or it may actually throw off their schedule. That's what happens. When you love or care, supposed to love or care someone who's sick, it does throw off your schedule. Plans may need to be canceled or rescheduled. Things may not happen as you thought. Your energy may wane, and because you are preoccupied, you may not be as good a source of supply. Basically, the rhythms of life change, and it's not because of them. And it may even be worse, that while you are ill, they may even accuse you of making it too big a deal. So they'll say, oh, please, it's just stage 3 cancer. At least it's not stage 4. Yeah. Or they'll say something like, oh, people have babies all the time. Or, is it really that bad? Do we really need to drive all the way to the emergency room right now? I'm finishing the game here. While you are in the midst of the illness, many times, obviously, you're so absorbed with it, especially if it is more acute, that you almost can't entertain the thought that they do not care. It's painful to think that someone may not care when you're in the most vulnerable spot of your life. And on top of that, you are just needing to survive. So maybe you actually do need their ride to the hospital or for them to help you up the stairs or whatever it may be. At those times, there may be cognitive dissonance for you, justification, and as I said, preoccupation with your own situation. So you just can't go there to a radical acceptance space of, wow, I actually think they're aggravated because I am sick. If all goes well, you come out of the medical crisis. In some cases, perhaps you'll be changed for your lifetime. Maybe you'll have issues with mobility or need ongoing therapies, or there's risks of relapse. But you do get better. You aren't so fragile. And that's usually when the narcissistic person will tell you something this insensitive. And no, you don't get to give them points for waiting until you weren't dying to give you this feedback and tell you that your illness inconvenienced them. What it means is that you actually did read the situation correctly in the first place. They really were annoyed when you were sick, as upsetting as that might seem. And now, in the aftermath of your illness, to hear them share with you that they were actually inconvenienced can also be unsettling. It's also possible that they will minimize it and say things like, well, it couldn't have been that bad, you're better, aren't you? And yet, having to have experienced a life-changing illness and have it be glossed over. Again, so invalidating, so unempathic. For those of you who have endured an accident that required care afterwards, a difficult pregnancy, or frankly, any pregnancy or an illness, and to be viewed as an inconvenience, at a minimum, let this terrible experience be a wake-up call. So you've already been through this whole illness or this mess, right? But it's a grim reminder that if you do become ill again, your health struggles again, or you have a recurrence, that it will be, again, that you're going to hear that you're inconvenient again. So that means now, while you're well, make sure you get your plan Bs in place and stop waiting for the wondrous moment that the narcissist is going to roll up and help you. Illness is the ultimate test of a narcissistic relationship, and invariably they fail. Many people are devastated when they recognize that all the justifying and wishing it was different and the wishful thinking, it all becomes devastating when you become sick. And the willingness to just say that they were actually able to say out loud that they were inconvenienced by your illness speaks to the fact that relationships for narcissistic folks are really merely transactional and functional. The test of a relationship is not the love bombing or the charm or the charisma. It's really the test of any relationship, is whether they're willing to hold your hand when you're sick. And they view it as a privilege to be able to sit there and get you through it. That's a healthy relationship. Always remember that that's the measure of love. And even if your illness may have at times been called an inconvenience, as difficult things in life are, when you're sick or at any time, you're the last person in the world who should ever have had to hear that. And all of us deserve better. So let's talk about this one. What happens if you have a narcissist in your life and you become more successful than them, or you just become successful in your own right? Short answer, not pretty. It's interesting because you would think a narcissist might like it if their partner, friend, sibling, or family member becomes successful. It should reflect well on them. It might open up new opportunities. They might get narcissistic supply by association. Not so much, because narcissists are very, very insecure. And as a result of that insecurity, if you start getting to be more successful, the first thing your narcissist will experience is a sense of threat. Your success is going to activate their insecurity. They're going to wonder if you are going to leave them, surpass them, and it's going to lead them to wonder, what does this mean for me? If you are, let's start with an intimate relationship. Let's say for some reason, your hard work, your career really starts taking off. It may be a small taking off. You get promoted maybe to department head. It could be a huge taking off, and your startup company takes off. Your narcissist may very well be the first person to rain on your parade. And for a lot of people, their own success is one of the first times they recognize how petty, how sensitive, and how unkind their narcissistic partner can become. Let's face it, when you're in an intimate relationship, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to tell your partner. You get good news, you want to pick up that phone and say, you're not going to believe it. I got the promotion. My book contract got picked up. I got the part. I won the election. Whatever it is, that's the person you want to share it with. You like to think that person is your person. And a lot of people, right after all the love bombing and all that, they're often vulnerable to thinking, this person's got me. Oh my gosh, they're going to be so excited for me. And then you get oh, wow. Or, oh, okay. Do you think you're ready for that? And they will infuse it with doubt. And what felt like should be a red letter day with popping champagne corks and your own personal parade turns into one more day of self-doubt, like a lot of days are in narcissistic relationships. It can be heartbreaking because let's take that back a little to when you were a kid. The other place where your success might have been a threat to a narcissistic parent. Obviously, a kid may not feel that threatened by a 5-year-old child, though you'd be surprised. But as that 5-year-old child gets older and maybe starts winning the sports trophies or starts doing well in school or is turning out to be a bigger, greater beauty than their narcissistic mother, or is getting more positive attention from the world, that child, knowing that they are succeeding, may literally feel guilty at surpassing their parents. That primitive dynamic for a child to feel that their success is not something celebrated by their narcissistic parent, but rather that it's something that threatens their narcissistic parent, is exactly the reason that some people learn at an early age to play down their accomplishments so they don't hurt their parents and leave their parents feeling as somehow they're not good enough, or that somehow they feel guilty because their parents may not have had that same opportunity. Now fast forward that into adulthood, where you desperately want a partner to be happy for you. But if you choose a narcissistic partner, which you're more likely to do if you've had a narcissistic parent, your experience of success can be met with that same sense of, oh, my goodness, that's something. Other things that may happen when you share your success with a narcissistic partner is on that day, they may make it about their bad day. Ah, you chose an interesting day to share this with me because today I found out my division is having budget cuts, so my job may be at risk. Or, God, it must be nice that this happened. I've only been trying for 5 years to get my book published, but how nice that your first time out, they decided to publish yours. They will literally turn it into their sad sack story rather than being present with you. There was once a show, again, sorry gentlemen who are watching this video, it's a girl reference, Sex and the City, I believe. I was watching this on an airplane once, and this episode came up. And it was the character of Carrie, who's a writer, was in a relationship with a guy named Jack, who was a writer. And all he would do is complain about it. It seemed like everything was so easy for her. She would get big residual checks. She'd be able to buy fancy things. She'd have these big book release events. And his writing wasn't as successful, even though she praised and praised and praised his writing and thought he was a brilliant writer. His career was foundering as hers was soaring. You could see him get angrier and angrier and her feel more and more and more uncomfortable and guilty with her success. It was just that perfect cinematic depiction of the narcissistic man and the woman who's getting more successful. What's very interesting is the catch-22. Many times narcissistic individuals are drawn and attracted to successful people, right? Because it makes them look good. It might put them in the right social circles. It's a way for them to feel good about themselves. But it can start to feel uncomfortable over time when there's a sense that the one person, that if the narcissist feels here and their partner is here, that they need to kind of figure out a way to fill in that gap. And it's not unusual for the narcissist to blame the other person who's more successful for their lack of success, saying it's your fault because we had to put all our time into your career. We had to move for your career. Everything was about you, and they'll blame the other person for their lack of success. Many, many people have said that it was when their career, for any number of reasons, started to succeed, that the narcissistic dynamic in their relationship really, really, really got highlighted. When they were both at the same level, maybe both struggling in the same way, or when things changed over time. Maybe there was a time when one of them was more of a student, and so they were in a less financially comfortable position. Well, then that person was no longer a student and then started having greater success in their field. That too was unsettling for the narcissist. This can be a really, really tricky space because some people will almost sabotage their own success so they can keep the relationship with the narcissist going, knowing damn well that if they succeed too much, the narcissist will be too unsettled. It is not unusual when it's your big night that the narcissist will come and spoil it. They'll get drunk at the party for your promotion. They won't show up at a party or an event of something that you're launching. They won't come to that special lecture you're supposed to bring saying that they were not feeling well or they had a headache. Over and over and over again, you will feel disappointed because your narcissist doesn't want to share in or partake your success. Over time, you will get more and more frustrated, but then another dynamic gets highlighted. Because many people in narcissistic relationships desperately want to impress their partner, they're always trying to win them over. Even if you, as the healthy partner, is up here, you're making more money, you're more successful, you're killing it at work, you're killing it at life, and your narcissistic partner's down here, you still keep trying to get their attention. Sound familiar? Probably what you had to do as a kid to garner your parents' attention. Look, Mom and Dad, I got straight A's. Look, I got the soccer trophy. Look, I got the lead in the play. Look, I did this. Look, I did that. Please, please, please pay attention to me. That attention a child craves, they never get. So when they go into adulthood and they keep succeeding the same way they tried to as a kid to win over that parent, now as an adult, they're doing it to win over that partner. And then they're finding out that it's actually going a very different way. The more that you succeed, the more that your narcissistic partner takes umbrage at it, that pushes it away, that doesn't show up at your events, you don't even get a chance to almost show off for them. That disappointment can weigh on you over time. And what gets interesting is that this is not an unusual juncture at which the narcissistic partner may commit infidelity and cheat on you. Remember, they may not feel like they can keep up with you. All of their insecurity is being boom, 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 turned on. And they may not feel like they can get the supply they once got from you, even though you're being the same with them as you've always been. They may seek out new narcissistic supply in the form of an inappropriate relationship, and they'll often choose someone who doesn't have as much power than them, someone who's younger than them, someone who's in a subjugated position to them, just to get that sense of power. They clearly no longer feel with you, even though you desperately want to share your success with them. So if you are in a narcissistic relationship and you are succeeding, be prepared that the gap between you and your narcissistic partner may very well grow. The invalidation may become more invalidating, the disrespect more disrespectful, the mean comments meaner, the hurt greater. They want you to feel as bad as they do. The narcissist often engages in projection, projecting all of those icky feelings they have onto you, and that feeling of discomfort is one that they will often basically do the psychological equivalent of vomit all over you. The success dynamic plays out in narcissistic family systems too when you get to be an adult. It's very interesting because what often happens is a child from a narcissistic family system who may go on to tremendous success often wants to spoil their parents in some ways to try to keep winning them over. As a 5-year-old, maybe your drawing in art class wasn't enough, But as a 30-year-old or 40-year-old or 50-year-old, maybe you could buy him a fancy car or take him on a fancy vacation. Heck, I even heard of one story where somebody bought their parents a house. They had a deeply, deeply hurtful narcissistic mother, and the mom's comment was, that's interesting. I thought you were going to buy me a bigger one. And honestly, when I talked to this man, his face looked as hurt as a face would look of a 5-year-old child whose mom wasn't interested in the Valentine that they made for them. Same hurt, maybe different stakes and different scale, whether it's your 5-year-old Valentine or your 35 or 55-year-old beach house, it's the same thing. In those family dynamics, as you try to win over your parents, it's not unusual for the narcissistic father to criticize you and say, well, back in my day, it was a lot harder to do this. It must be nice to come up in an era where it's easier. Or a narcissistic mother to say to you, well, it's a lot easier for you. You have a very supportive spouse. Had I had that kind of support, blah, blah, blah. Lots of passive-aggressive barbs as you get more and more successful. And you may even see, you might even become your family's scapegoat. Even if you were the golden child as a child, as an adult, if you were arrogant enough to try to out-succeed everyone, even though it seems that's all your parents wanted you to do, that once you start doing it, again, you activate those insecurities in your parents. The hardest thing to watch is that many times when people get into narcissistic relationships, it's the equivalent of tying sandbags to your feet. No matter how big the balloon is over your head, you're not able to launch because you almost feel a sense of survivor guilt at out-surpassing the narcissists in your lives. Their willingness to generate a sense of guilt, to use passive-aggressive comments, to diminish your success, to minimize it with hurtful comments, with criticisms, with jokes, with mockery, to minimize you by saying, oh my gosh, really? We're going to talk about your promotion again? When it was only the second time you've brought it up. If I can give you only one piece of guidance, if you come from a narcissistic family or you have a narcissistic partner and things in your life are looking up in small ways or big ways, promise me one thing. Please take that success experience and share it with people who are worthy of hearing it first. I hope that all of you have at least one friend or one family member who will hear your success and be so happy about it, they'll be like, we got to buy all the champagne in town, or I am taking you out to dinner, or they literally get tears in their eyes because they're so happy for you. Launch your achievements. Launch your success. Share that success with the people who appreciate it the right way. At some point, you got to go home and share it with your narcissist or let your family know about it. But by the time you do, I hope you've had the experience of sharing it with those people who are your cheerleaders, who are happy for you, and who uplift you. Get those sandbags off your feet. It is okay to succeed. It's the narcissist problem if they are too damn insecure to be there for you. I can almost promise you they will be. Or, in another telling of the story, may even take credit for your success. Oh, you wouldn't have gotten there if I hadn't mentored you. You wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't make those introductions for you. You would have never have gotten there unless I had supported you all those years. Or my favorite, when it's patently untrue, well, you know darn well you got there by being flirtatious and inappropriate. For all I know, you may have even slept your way to the top. Those are the kinds of things a narcissist will do to either take credit for your success or diminish it in such a way that you even start doubting it. Please, please, please don't pawn your soul off that way. Be your own cheerleader. Find your own cheerleaders. And then, after you've told many people, and only then, tell it to your narcissist as a passing comment. Don't turn to them for the popping champagne cork. Let them know, because it's probably good for them to know that something happened in your life, but wait a few days.
So have any of you had this situation that sometimes, and I'm telling you that sometimes, but have you ever find yourself that just as you were getting happy, like your life was really going well again, that's when they hoover you? Well, what we're going to talk about today, this idea that sometimes they hoover you because they don't want you to be happy. Okay, so let's sort of lay it out this way. So let's say your narcissistic relationship ends, right? Maybe you ended it, maybe they ended it, maybe it ended badly, the kind of thing where they cheated or betrayed you in some way. Whatever it may be, the narcissistic relationship ends. And that's never easy because it's so confusing. You may grieve, you may mourn, you may feel devastated even though you know it's good for you. You ruminate, you obsess, you look at their social media if they have it. You might go through a period where you can't sleep or you lose weight because you can't eat. You go into therapy maybe. Maybe you go into a certain Dr. Ramani's healing program. And as always, that link is available in the video notes. But you do what you can to heal from this, right? But you do the work. Time passes, and honestly, when it comes to healing from narcissistic abuse, time may be your greatest friend. You start to feel better. Then you start to feel really better. Maybe work starts going better. Maybe you meet someone, or you travel, or you do other things that you've always wanted to do. You slowly take your life back, and you really recognize that your life is so much better without the narcissistic person in it. It took you a while, and you're getting closer and closer to indifference, to not caring about what has happened to them or what they're doing. You may not even wish them ill will, but you just don't care about them anymore. You really are in what I consider to be the zone of healing. And then one day, you see a message from them. Maybe you block them, but they use a new number. Maybe you didn't block them. Maybe it's an email that gets through. It's a lot harder to block email. But you're resolute. However they try to break you down, it's as though they've made a list of every single thing you ever had wanted to hear from them, that they are sorry, that now they finally see that your gifts and your goodness, that they weren't worthy of you, that they knew you would be better off without them, and they play the victim. Who knows? Whatever it is, they just keep going. But you're the new improved you right now, right? You're more healed, you feel resolute, and even believe that you've now evolved. And you might start making that mistake of like, well, I'm healed. We could be friends, right? That's what modern, healthy people do. You might even respond to their messages. You might even give them some advice because they're going through a tough time. And maybe you even agree to meet. And that means checkmate. And now it's their game again. The tricky thing about life post-narcissist is to not advertise your growth and healing too much, which I know is not easy in a social media world. If you are still struggling and crying into your coffee and sharing your misery, the narcissistic person isn't that interested in you. They've already overwhelmed you, and they're done with you. They're on to their next thing. And as long as you're miserable, they don't care, like they've already ruined you. But if you share your growth, you and having a happy new relationship, you traveling the world, you thriving, now you're happy and you're tempting. They may hoover you to show you that they can still dominate you or that they can still win, or maybe they're just sadistic and they don't want you to be happy. I actually believe that for narcissistic people, other people's happiness disgusts them. But you want to share your joy with the world, and I get that. And I think it's wonderful, but it's dangerous. It's almost like using your real identity while you are in the witness protection program, right? It's dangerous. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Because if they see that you're happy, you become someone to dominate again, to harm again. So what do? Number one, keep in mind that indifference and detachment are just that. Do not engage is not a short-term strategy. It is a forever strategy. The more severe the narcissistic abuse, the greater the importance that you should never engage with them again. If they send you a cryptic message from a new phone, old phone, any phone, block again, or at the very least, ignore it. The same with DMs and emails. If you can't stop that, if you can't do enough blocking, then no backing and forthing. But if you do respond, that means you're in play. And then it becomes more of a game for them. It's like you're a live bite on a fishing line. You need to be at the most advanced levels of healing to not engage. Now, also keep in mind, if you are in a new relationship, well, that could be a little bit of a protection or a hedge because you don't want to hurt the new person by engaging with a harmful person from your past. At least I hope you don't. But that new person Having that new person in your life will lead them to try even harder, and I'll say more about that in a minute. The narcissistic person may even see that they're in danger. If they're in danger, call 911 and send an ambulance to their house, but do not engage. Number 2, if you are in a new relationship, well, fact is that is game on for a narcissistic person, because now there is someone to take you away from, and they love that kind of fight. Think of how, and just take a minute, and think of how you would feel if your new partner started interacting with a narcissistic and manipulative ex. My guess is not good, so don't you do it either. It becomes a major cat and mouse game between you and the ex-narcissist in your life. And the idea that you have someone new in your life gets their juices going. Keep your new relationship under wraps. And even just to be empathic to your new partner, do not respond, block even if it's multiple numbers being blocked, and do not engage. Do not engage. Number 3, if you aren't all the way indifferent and still feel you would respond to the narcissist, then if you can find a way, don't put your life on social media. Because if even one person from your life has a connection to the narcissistic person, even if your account settings are in private, even if you've blocked the ex-narcissist, your success and happiness becomes something for them to dismantle. And narcissistic folks are masterful at recruiting flying monkeys and spies. I know people love sharing their lives on social media, but if you are in the acute stages of healing, and it was a more severe narcissistic relationship, keep your healing quiet for now. Number 4, really, really ask your friends to never share how your life is going with the ex-narcissistic person. I know that can feel a little bossy, but some people, especially enably people, just don't get this. Now, the fact is, this is not something you can really enforce, but you can certainly try to remind them. And if you are a friend of someone, don't think you are doing them any favors by rolling up to the ex-narcissist in their life if you see them out and about and saying, hey, your ex is doing great and has a new life and a new thing and a new that. That may not end up being an issue, but it could also just aggravate or incite the narcissist enough to make them want to reach in and make a mess of things in a new life you've made. And number 5, no, it won't be different this time. Just because you feel better about yourself and are doing things you love, that doesn't mean they change. They don't change. I don't have enough days in the week to list all of the people out there who have told me that they were actually at the top of their game when they originally met the narcissist who was in their life. And the narcissistic person dismantled them brick by brick. Always remember what was done to you. And maybe right now you're healed and you're single, or healing and single. You're feeling good about your life. And then the narcissist wanders back in. I promise you, if you let them back in, that same dismantling process will happen again. It's what they do. Scorpion is gonna sting. Narcissistic people are allergic to other people's happiness. It's really that simple. And especially the happiness of people who they have already controlled and dominated. So if you want to share it, then make sure your gates are tall and high so the narcissist can't come back in and do any more harm. They don't change. That's the nature of this personality and the thing that gives them joy. Control, domination, power, those things still give them joy. And that usually means harming you. For this reason, journaling is so important. You need to read all of the terrible stuff that happened in this relationship because you journaled it in real time. And also to journal your healing so you can see how hard the work was of grief and of healing. Read all of that, see all of that before you ever let them in again. How often have you felt that one of the hardest things about having lifelong narcissistic relationships, parents, family members, partners, coworkers, friends, but most pointedly parents, if that was your story, was that no one ever defended you, took your side, or had your back? If that's was your experience, drop that in the comments because I think it's an important one.
Something I observe consistently in survivors of narcissistic abuse is the lack of safety that they feel in the world, and really the sense that no one was going to protect you. Yes, by the time we get into adulthood, we are supposed to be able to protect ourselves, but that is really hard to do if it was never done for you. So let's think about this as a few scenarios. You are a child. You are a child, maybe at a family gathering or some other social gathering, and someone was mocking you, criticizing you, perhaps insulting you. Maybe it was your appearance or how you were doing in school or your interests. And instead of your narcissistic parent stepping up and saying, "Hey, step off, don't talk to my child like that," or even seeing that your parent took the person aside who was doing that or got you out of that situation, instead, your parent either added to the piling on or just walked away and left you to have to endure the criticism. Or a situation where a sibling was bullying you and your narcissistic parent just left you to figure it out yourself. Fast forward to adulthood. You're in a narcissistic relationship. You're sitting with a group of people, and someone in that group is really behaving in a disrespectful manner to you, maybe insulting you. Instead of your partner, in a healthy way, talking to that person or even speaking to the person off to the side or just simply defending you, they either laugh at the disrespectful treatment you are enduring, or they join in or they ignore it. And then when you ask them about it later, and I say, "Why didn't you stand up for me?" they give you some kind of anemic excuse, or they accuse you of being too sensitive. People in narcissistic relationships do not feel safe for a wide variety of reasons. But one of the major reasons that they do not feel safe is because nobody ever defended them. I don't mean dysregulated, egotistical defending or someone like screaming at top volume, but appropriate stepping in and saying, "Ah, whoa, not okay. Step back and please don't, what are you doing here? Don't be talking to my child, my friend, my partner, my colleague like that. Like, that's not okay." The narcissist is so concerned with appearances and getting their own validation and supply that they are rarely going to be willing to sacrifice any of that to defend someone else. Well, sometimes a narcissistic parent will be willing to get into a scrape to defend their child, but it is often for egoistic reasons that reflect the narcissistic person themselves being insulted and with the child as an afterthought. Again, I am aware that as adults, we shouldn't need to turn to other people to defend us. That's not what this is about. Without this ever happening, since childhood being defended, without it ever being modeled, many of us had to learn to do this for ourselves at a young age. Again, results in the world feeling like an unsafe space. If we get it when we're children, we're better able to keep ourselves safe as adults. And when you're in a relationship, it doesn't feel good to have your partner just watching you sit there and really get harmed by other people. I remember so well something that happened in my own family system in which I defended a family member who had been narcissistically abused throughout his life and then was narcissistically abused by another family member. Now, it is not cool in a South Asian family for a woman to step in and talk back to an older man, but I did because that older man's behavior was unacceptable. I was struck by how shocked the person that I defended looked when I did it. And I recognized part of it was because nobody had ever done it for them, because he kept talking about it. Now, outdated and unearned cultural respect hierarchies often keep narcissistically abusive patterns in place. And maybe because of the work I do, something in me just couldn't stand by and watch it happen. Needless to say, the narcissistic person did not speak to me for a very, very long time. This is no big loss. But for a moment, I was grateful to make the world feel a little safer for someone who had endured that bad treatment throughout their lives, and at least for once had someone defend them. The devaluation of narcissistic abuse is not just about how the narcissistic person treats us directly. It is also very clear that they do not have our backs. Many people in marriages and long-term committed relationships with narcissistic partners will say, "My partner will defend anyone else as long as it isn't me," and will often say that their partner, more often than not, will choose sides against them. This kind of triangulated stance is a way for the narcissist to almost show off in front of other people. And you are a soft target if you are their partner. They're always going to let you take that fall. For us as children, we look to parents and caregivers for safety. We wanted them to have our backs and to defend us, or at a minimum, to have protected us. For a child to see that the very people who are supposed to protect them do not step up, and in fact may be part of the group that is being unkind to them, sets a tone for life, to never quite feel safe in relationships. And that feeling unsafe can make a person more vulnerable to choosing unsafe partners. People who grow up in narcissistic families, especially the scapegoats and the truth tellers, will recall never having been defended, though observing the more valued siblings, typically the golden children and the brainwashed children, be defended. Those triangulated and that contrasting treatment can be uniquely unsettling and painful for children. In a strange way, narcissistic people have contempt for anyone who is close to them. It's mostly because the people close to them are viewed as disposable, sure things. The narcissistic folks often assume that they can treat those closest to them any way they want and assume that they will not leave. For narcissists, supply is a numbers game, and defending just you and potentially losing the supply of other people is not going to work for them. And on top of that, they have contempt for the person close to them anyhow, so why would they defend them, right? When you grow up in a family and watch the narcissistic parent not defend your other parent, perhaps in front of the in-laws or other family members, it can also set a tone for you in which you see marriage as something that is unsafe, inequitable, and not a true partnership. The in-law issue leaves many people feeling unsafe in their own relationships and marriages. And narcissistic ego is such that the narcissist will often side with their own parents against a partner. Now, in the workplace, this same theme can also arise. You may have a toxic boss or colleague, and when it is showtime, or perhaps you are meeting with, I don't know, someone else within your organization or with a client or someone in leadership, and let's say that person, that client or that person in leadership is coming at you, the toxic boss is always going to choose what works best for them, with little allegiance to even the most loyal colleagues and team members. For narcissistic folks, you are only a team when it works for them. Again, I have heard this theme come up repeatedly. The lack of safety and the grief that comes from a narcissistic family member or partner or even friend or colleague not defending you to others when it is warranted. It can feel like a psychological abandonment of sorts and make the relationship feel perpetually unsafe, which it actually is. Pay attention when that happens, because when folks are coming at you and they allegedly love you and they don't defend you, that's a choice. And if they're making that choice, it's a larger statement about how they regard your relationship and your place in it. There will come a time when it may not be that they're defending you against some nonsensical insult, but may have to advocate for you in a high-stakes situation, perhaps, for example, a healthcare issue or something. If this person will not defend you against, I don't know, some silly, insults you're even getting at a family gathering, do you really think that this person is going to go to the mattresses for you, go to bat for you when you really need an advocate? I'm thinking not. So this pattern is not only one that brings up grief, it's one that reminds you that when you really need this relationship, you really need this person to be there at your back, they probably won't be. Thanks again.